So, surprise election results for that snap election. But joining us now to unpack what this all means is Smita Purushottam, who's a researcher under the Economic Diplomacy Program at the South African Institute of International Affairs. What were the factors, perhaps, that led to Theresa May's loss of support and Corbyn's gains? Let's find out now. Thank you very much for joining us on the program, and welcome to you. People are calling this a shock, a surprise. At the end of the day, was it really?
At the time at which she called the snap election, she had made up to 5 to 6 statements previously stating that she would not call a snap election. So the fact that she decided to call a snap election was firstly quite surprising. And secondly, at the time at which she did, she had more than, I think, 31% lead against the Labour Party. So it was, at that point, I think for her, in her mind, it made sense for her to call this election and to really seal the deal, so to speak. But over the last few weeks, we saw an election campaign that almost swiftly unraveled on itself, essentially. There were a number of U-turns that May made on particular issues that was of concern to her constituency, one of them, of course, being the social protection and social benefits, given the fact that the Tories' constituency is largely pensioners and elderly citizens. So some of her stance on particular issues probably caused her demise, and of course, I think the fact that she may have won the election but didn't get the majority, of course, leaves the Conservative Party in a far more weakened position than they would have been to actually just continue with the Brexit negotiations. And ultimately, that's exactly what became part of the problem, is that the whole point of the election was to strengthen May's positioning and to strengthen the Conservatives' positioning to negotiate a Brexit position. Specifically, she wanted to drive what she calls, the hard Brexit deal. And all it's done is actually not only weaken the Conservative Party as a whole, but also potentially weaken her own ability to try and seal the deal on a hard Brexit negotiation. So she may have won the election. She doesn't have a majority government, but in many ways it's a lose-lose outcome for May.
So, when we look at images of Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn, people might be wondering, did people actually vote for issues or did they vote personalities? David Cameron surprised everybody in the last election by getting this majority for the Conservatives. Everyone thought that this was going to be a hung parliament and a coalition was going to be formed, but he delivered a majority to the Conservative Party and said, here, Theresa, here's a majority, get on with the job. And in a very short space of time, enter stage left, Jeremy Corbyn for Labour, and enter stage right, Theresa May, and the fortunes change. Do you think it might have been about the personalities, because the parties themselves couldn't have changed that radically in a short space of time?
Personalities might have something to do with it, although there's a lot of existing reporting and literature to suggest that neither of them are great candidates for their respective parties. There are many who seem to believe that. So I think whether or not personality is the issue might be a potential, but I think the real thing was the type of Brexit outcome. In some ways, I guess, if you're going to have to vote based on the type of future outcome you'd like to see the UK in a post-Brexit world, then that would be an overriding concern for many. And I think what we need to remember is that they're saying, polls have shown and statistics have shown that at least 5%, so it could potentially be more when all the numbers come in, but at least 5% increase in youth voting compared to the 2015 election. And the 5% of youth votes that have increased between the two elections will likely went towards the Labour vote, right? Because, as we know, the Brexit vote was largely democratic, but also largely an age-driven process. So a lot of young people that did not vote in the 2015 election came out and voted at this particular election, and the odds are they probably voted in favor of Labour. So I think that has also helped explain why Labour has gained the kind of seats that it did, and why Theresa May have lost the type of number of seats that she did.
So what you're saying is that the youth got the fright of their lives when Britain actually voted to exit the European Union, and they've decided, listen, if we don't take the bull by the horns, our country could disappear in its entirety. Is that what we're reading from what you're saying?
I think it is a contributing factor. It's obviously not the only factor. There's a lot of reasons why Labour could have voted, they not in favour of austerity, potentially a softer approach towards Brexit. But I think one of the things that helped Labour specifically is the presence of an increased number of youth voters in this particular snap election.
Can Theresa May remain the leader of the Conservative Party?
Well, this is the million-dollar question as it stands. At the moment, she said that she has not stopped down. At the moment, she also said that she is likely to form a coalition government with the DUP, which is a party from Northern Ireland. So as it stands, she looks to stay on as Prime Minister. This is according to her own testimony. Whether there is internal party politics that eventually forces her to step down, or whether she steps on of her own accord for whatever reason, that is something that needs to be seen in the coming weeks. But today, as it stands, she has gone and spoken to the Queen. She has gotten the mandate to form a coalition government, and today she says she is not stepping down. Whether that changes in the coming weeks is something that remains to be seen.
And that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thank you very much indeed for your insights. That was Asmita Parshodam, who is sharing her thoughts with us about Theresa May's fortunes going forward and Britain and Brexit post that snap election that said pretty much, look, we're not terribly convinced with your ideas, and they're going to have to rethink.